What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and today I want to talk a little bit about this apparent war chest that the Geelong Football Club has and its plans to invest it in a couple of big-name recruits across the next 12 to 24 months. There's been a lot of names that we've speculated and discussed over the course of the last little period. And of course, when you get this little bit of information that comes out, courtesy of Mitch Cleary at Channel 7, and we'll talk about his quote shortly, and even what Chris Scott spoke about then the following night on Agenda Setters, it prompts a lot of questions because there's a lot of players attached to the club at various different points in time, some that are being discussed for 2025, some that are being discussed for 2026. And, there's potential father-sons and NGAs and all sorts of different pieces to this puzzle. And so there's a lot for us to break down, a lot more than it would appear at first. And so I want to get through what was said by both Mitch Cleary, what was said by Chris Scott, and then get into a little bit of speculation from there with you after a word from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at Shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all we get up to. Now, let's get into the story itself here, and we bring up the 7 News website here, which has broken up what Mitch Cleary discussed on TV for them, and basically highlights that Geelong are in the market for another big-name recruit, or potentially even 2 of them, as my dogs go wild in excitement outside. So 7 News chief AFL reporter Mitch Cleary revealed that the Cats will have plenty of room in their salary cap space to splurge on 2 stars in the next few years. And what he says is that we know the success they've had with Jeremy Cameron, Patrick Dangerfield and Bailey Smith from other clubs, but the Cats are not done yet. They're going to be hard after Harley Reid and Zach Butters in the years to come. Now, we've speculated about both of these individuals over the course of the last few months, and I've put together videos where we've discussed the prospects of this, how it could happen, why it should happen, why it shouldn't happen, et cetera, who the competition are for these particular players. But there's a whole lot of context to the whole thing. So Cleary says that Geelong's CEO Stephen Hocking had told the audience at a Pivots coterie function, which is a long-standing thing for Geelong fans, that the club had room in the salary cap for 2 more stars over the next couple of years. Now, firstly, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to get 2 stars, but they've got the money to do so. We'll talk about how and why that's going to be the case shortly. But the Cats always seem to be a destination for rival players, and already this year have been linked to superstar trio Matt Rowell, Butters, and Reid. Now, how does the Geelong Football Club have enough money for 2 of these potential superstars? Well, a lot of it boils down to our age profile. We think about what we've seen occur in the Geelong list in recent years. We're right now in this period where we're still competitive, which is amazing, despite the fact that a lot of the younger blokes are coming through and doing the heavy lifting, and they're not earning the amount of money that a Paddy Dangerfield or a Jeremy Cameron would at their peak, Tom Stewart at their peak, Tom Hawkins when he was at his peak. And if you think about what we've seen in the last few years, we are seeing this transitioning out and into retirement for a range of our senior and more expensive players. Tom Hawkins retiring, Zach Toohey retiring, Gary Rowan delisted, Brandon Parfitt delisted. We think about what's potentially to come this year. And I say potentially because there's a lot of variables in the mix, and some of them are playing really great football at the moment. But we think about Mitch Duncan. We think about Reece Stanley. We think about Cam Guthrie. And, they're probably the 3 that I think are on the minds of most as being there or thereabouts when it comes to their retirement. 2 of those 3 are playing pretty damn good football at the moment. And unfortunately, Cam Guthrie is really struggling to get on the field and stay out there at the moment. But these guys are absolutely in the twilight of their careers as well. And what happens when all of these players depart is they free up money. Some of them much more than others. And so that creates opportunity. That's how you get a Bailey Smith in the door last year. And that's how you potentially re-enter conversations for big name players next year. And so as we go back to the article here, Chris Scott was asked about it because he was on the agenda setters the following night. And he said, look, they're good names when referencing Reid and Butters, and said, I think we're like every club. We sort of think big initially, but we're in a position to think about it. One of the fortunate things about having a more experienced list, which has been the case for a long time now, is that we tend to have had players who have had big salaries in their prime, but are sort of coming down. Exactly what I discussed there. It would make sense when we lose Patrick Dangerfield at some point, Jeremy Cameron. That'd be a bit of room there, but hand on heart, it's something it's not something I have great visibility over. I certainly know that we can be in the market. And I guess the thing that we can really hone in on here is the who. And of course, we've put together so many videos in recent months about a range of different prospects. And of course, we've done one on Harley Reid. We've done one on Zach Butters. We've done one on Matty Rowell. We've also spoken about TDK. We've spoken about Rowan Marshall, Clayton Oliver, James Warple, Jamara Ugle-Hagan. There's been a range of different Sam Walsh. There's been a range of different players that we've discussed on this show in the last few months, or even, when we talk about Clayton Oliver, we're going back to late last year. These players are players that the club is considering. And I guess the conversation becomes, who do the Cats, let's assume that they've got the money, who do the Cats go for? And this is where I think we need to think a little bit more laterally and a little bit more strategically, and not just think about who is available now and who we can get. Because there are certainly some of those players that are listed that are potential options for us next year, for us this year. There's also some of those that might be options next year. Do we invest in one now, one later? Do we invest in all in the now and try and get them all in 2025 and go from there? And there's variables in this mix. So these are the two that, in my opinion, and it's purely my opinion, it's based on nothing more, are the players that we should most go for. And in my mind, it is the two that were circled in the article in the first place. That is Harley Reid and Zach Butters. Now, I've spoken about how in the past, I think given the choice, I would probably pick a Matty Rowell over a Harley Reid, especially right now with exposed form. And I guess we're not getting some of the behavioural sort of things when it comes to Harley Reid. Zach Butters even gets himself suspended from time to time. Like Matt Rowell is more disciplined. Clayton Oliver's struggling at the moment. There's a range of other reasons why some of these other players we wouldn't pick. For me, Butters and Reid are the big two. And the reason why I think it's really important is because firstly, they're excellent players. But secondly, there's a bit more to this year's trade and draft period for Geelong than perhaps people are considering when we discuss who are these big fish that we should be keeping an eye on. We're looking, so often we're going, who's that big player? Okay, let's go get him. Now, when it comes to both Reid and Butters, next year is when they're out of contract. So there's nuance there when it comes to Butters. I believe I could be wrong here. Please chat, clarify for me here. He could be a free agent, and so there's different mechanisms in place in terms of what we need to offer to be able to get him. Harley Reid would be a different story altogether. But the thing about this scenario is that if we pick up those two at the end of next year with this war chest that we've got, what that unlocks is a lot of possibilities this year. And I haven't really spoken too much about this bloke on the show up to this point, but Jesse Mellor, probably a name that most of you aren't familiar with. But Jesse Mellor is an NGA prospect that Geelong has this year, and he's a pretty highly fancied one. Now, we don't often have NGA prospects, but we've got one, and it sounds like he's a pretty decent player from all reports. I haven't seen any footage of him in action yet, and that's something I'd like to spend some time looking at if that footage exists. Please, again, someone, if you're watching this video and you've got a link, please drop it in the comments section here, and I'd love to kind of see some of that footage and see how he plays. But I've heard wonderful things about him, but the fact of the matter is he's an NGA prospect. So just like father-sons, there's a bidding process in play here, and Geelong might have to pony up big for him. So we need to be mindful of what picks we have available to be able to service that particular deal. And then beyond that, we've got some other really important prospects and father-sons to factor in. And here's just 3 father-sons that we could be considering. So we're talking about Jack Graham, who's the son of Ben Graham. We're talking about Jagger Mooney, Cam Mooney's son. We're talking about Boston Riccardi, Peter Riccardi's son. There are a range of prospects here for the father-son system as well, and you need picks to be able to match offers that come in. So Geelong can't afford to throw too many picks in it. And if we were to go for a Butters or a Reid this year, or anyone else for that matter, we're going to have to offer up picks. And we may not want to necessarily get rid of those picks because of some of these names that I'm just talking about. On top of all that is a name that regularly gets discussed in the Paul James show of a Thursday or a Sunday night, is that Hunter Holmes, Max's brother, is also coming through in this draft. And he's apparently, there's starting to become a bit of a groundswell of noise for him and what he's capable of. Now, of course, we can't pick him up as a father-son. There's no brother-son sort of rule in place. But given all that we've done with Max and what Max has produced, he's done so much himself. there's a bit of thought that you go, maybe Hunter's capable of doing the same sorts of things. And so do we need to go chasing him as well? And to do that with the noise that's starting to build and the known commodity that is his brother, you might need to have an early-ish pick to be able to get him. It's a really tricky situation for Geelong. That's 5 different under-18s players who could all potentially justify a spot at the Geelong Football Club, but you've got to have picks. And in this scenario, for 4 of those 5, you've got to be able to outbid, and potentially in the case of Hunter too, if the demand is there, you've got to be able to outbid or get in first with all of these players. And that's a really, really difficult thing to do when you've potentially given away a bunch of picks to pick up some big high-profile recruits. So in my mind, we could get some big fish this year. We could get someone like a Matty Rowell, and he'd be huge. And then maybe we get a Harley Reid or a Zach Butters or someone next year. And this is all assuming no other clubs get involved as well, which of course they will. Apparently Hawthorn has got eyes on a lot of players very similar to the ones that we're keen on. And there's going to be other clubs as well, undoubtedly, for some of these big fish. It's a really tricky situation to try and manage all these things when you don't really have picks to work with. So in my mind, let's invest in next year. Maybe we don't have any of those father-sons. Maybe we don't have some of those under-18s prospects coming through. And so that's the best time to commit your picks. And, your trade and draft capital is at that time, as opposed to this year when there's some real prospects that could do some pretty awesome things and competition for those players. So for my mind, Harley Reid, Zach Butters are the 2 that we try and go all out for. And of course, maybe it doesn't work out and you get someone else, but I would be putting those 2 at the top of the shopping list right now for the end of 2026. Just cool the jets. And we've heard rumblings that Harley Reid is just settling in for another year and is going to go around 2026 before reassessing his options. Maybe that's part of it too, by the way. But that cool our jets. Don't invest big this year. Hopefully we win a premiership along the way. That'd be amazing. But load up on your young blokes next year and then go for the big fish in 12 months from now. Those watching, let me know what you think in the comments section. I'd really like to hear who you think are the big 2 that the Cats should be targeting. There's lots of names that have been attached to the club. Hell, I've even heard Geelong attached to Luke Jackson in the last 24 to 48 hours as well, due to some family ties in the Geelong region, or his partner's family ties in the Geelong region. So even he's a potential name to consider. Let me know who you think Geelong should be targeting with the upcoming trade periods. With this big war chest of money, who are we going to go commit it to? Let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe to the Hoops Crew, like this video, share it with your friends and family, get the word out there about all that we're producing, and let's get more people dialed in and checking out what we do. You'll find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thehoopscrew. You can sign up for 7 days of free trial access to all of the early access, exclusive, and extended content that we produce there. And for $5 a month after that, you can continue to get that content delivered to your email inbox. You'll find me at Paul James Games on socials. The Hoops Crew is at The Hoops Crew. That is Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. And until next time, remain Geelong strong, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing some of these big name fish in the hoops in 12 to 24 months from now. But until then, we are patient here at Geelong, and let's hopefully win a flag in the meantime. I will see you later.